So the dog and I are here amongst the devastation. We don't know how the Great Fire of Hobart began, but we do know pretty much where it started. Seems to have begun here in Limekiln Gully, specifically in the working quarry that's just beyond there, beyond the regrowth eucalyptus. On a Tuesday morning in 1967, at the height of summer, smoke was lifting up into the sky. Tuesday the 7th of February 1967. The Tasmanian winter and spring had been extra wet, creating large amounts of vegetation growth, and when the summer came it almost didn't rain at all, drying off all of the fuel by February. On Black Tuesday there would in fact be 110 separate fires, 90 of which had started on an earlier day, and 70 of those were left free burning on the morning of the 7th. Between 7:30 and 8 a.m. a small quantity of smoke was noticed, but nothing official was done about it for over an hour. The dog and I here at the Chapel Street substation, you can hear the ticking of electricity in the background. We've come to this spot because behind the fence there is the place where blokes on duty at work spotted the fire, and they called it in. To be exact, they saw the smoke. They made the call, they reported it. It was one of a whole bunch of fires that day, so it was not treated with the level of urgency that, in hindsight, was required. There was perhaps a point in time when the fire could have been put out, but the clock ticked and the flames grew, and then it was definitely too late. And as the fire spread through Hobart, there were more phone calls and more phone calls. And then there were less phone calls and less phone calls again, because the telephone lines started to burn down. By 11:30, the fire broke out of the gully and it began its southeasterly journey across the foothills and valleys of the mountain. At midday, the temperature had hit 39 degrees Celsius, very low humidity and very strong winds. The Hobart City Council dispatched men to fight it, but it was too late. Growing in power, by 1 p.m. the fire was feeding on homes at an increasing rate, travelling at 60 chains per hour. People raced to escape. Animals did not share that luxury. The fires were spreading at speeds beyond the experience of most Tasmanians, and in many cases their deaths were due to an error in judgment as to the location of the fire and the speed of which it was coming. Some were engulfed in a mass of spot fires which landed around them, while the main fire was a mile or so distant. Shower side fires proceeded outwards from the east and westerly perimeters after the main fire had actually passed. In the distance you can hear a rumble, and that is Kalang Avenue, the road that joins up Glenorchy with Lena Valley. The flames came through here on that Tuesday, obviously. We're sitting in the ruins of a house, a weatherboard home that burnt down. Bushfire behaves pretty strangely, and it's not observed that often because people get out of its way when it does occur. And people tried to get out of the way of these flames, and not everybody was able to. Out on the outskirts of Hobart in particular, there were these strange occurrences that people witnessed. The fire front would be here and their home would be here. They would leave their home and then they'd look back at their house. They'd see the front of the fire turn and depart, go away from their property. They'd breathe a sigh of relief and they'd think, okay, we're safe. Everything that we own is safe. And then suddenly, the houses would start to explode. We know now that what was happening was that there were ember attacks. Bits of stick and bark, leaves on fire, even if only just, floating around on the hot air and then landing down through chimneys, going in through open doors, getting up under verandas. You'd look back and you'd see everything that you had safe, and then suddenly it was completely engulfed in flames and there was absolutely nothing you could do about it. 1:45 p.m. the fire entered South Hobart, moving through Marlin Road and onto Strickland Avenue. Very heavy crown fires threw masses of burning embers into the Cascade Brewery, setting it alight. The stone walls of the factory were so strong that they did not fall. The desire of Tasmanians to drink beer so powerful that the facility was rebuilt immediately and running again 12 weeks later. For the longest time, the home of the head brewer sat above it all. It was not rebuilt. 3 p.m. The flames cast a spell on the city like bad magic. The same embers got into the trolley bus system, burning carriages as they found them. Fires were burning in Taroona, Mount Nelson, South Hobart, Denern, West Hobart, Mount Stewart and more. The Gore Street mill on the edge of the CBD was destroyed. Crossing the Huon Highway and Waterworks Road, the fire front that had started in Glenorchy was now all the way to Ferntree, where it met up with two other fire fronts, one wrapping around from Sleeping Beauty and one rising from Browns River. St Raphael's Church, built in 1892 in the Swiss style. It actually survived not just the 67 fire, but another one in 1898. So we're here in Ferntree where the fire fronts all joined up, pretty much where we are right now. Even if you're not inclined to believe in an interventionist God, it is pretty amazing that this wooden church didn't burn to the ground, especially when the building just across the road was razed to ash. The Ferntree Hotel obtained its first licence in 1861. It evolved over time, built on the path between Hobart and the Huon Valley. It was a landmark. Nothing built there since could restore that glory. 3:30 p.m. The direction of the wind had changed to the west and the fire raced up the mountain further. The iconic Springs Hotel opened in 1907. Destroyed quickly, the chimney stacks left standing. People assumed that it would be rebuilt. Then they hoped that it might be. Even now, people wonder. Looking back down the valley today, many of the ghost trees still stand. 4 p.m. and the worst of the damage had been done in 5 short hours. There's no evidence to enable us to determine the cause of the fire, but it may have been deliberately lit. Across the state, 1,293 houses were ruined. A disproportionate number of houses that had been painted white survived, something that today we understand more about. 1,700 other buildings also, such as factories, churches, halls, post offices, hotels, service stations and schools, 80 bridges and almost 5,000 sections of power lines. Burnt transmission poles, telephone and radio communication systems were disrupted. Power failures too. 62,000 farm animals, countless pets, unknowable native creatures. Over 7,000 people became homeless. Those unable to shelter with friends or family were turned into refugees, either fleeing the island to the mainland, some never returning, or being placed in temporary government accommodation camps. 900 people were injured. Most of those who died in their homes or within a short distance thereof were either very old and infirm or suffered from some physical disability. The ages of the people killed ranged from 23 to 88. Remarkably, no youths or children died in the fire. Many passed as a result of their efforts to help others, 11 directly so, while heroically firefighting. In the immediate, the official death toll was at 53. The figure rose to 62 when you included people whose lives had been hastened by the effects of the event. In 2017, 50 years after the disaster, more names were added to the toll, with 2 people whose demise had initially not been investigated by the coroner. In total, 64 Tasmanians departed on Black Tuesday. It's hard to say, but some have said that it set Tasmania back a solid decade. And it's one of the reasons that the island still lags behind the rest of the country, in some ways. Black Tuesday and the Great Fire of Hobart has not since been repeated, but on a long enough timeline, everyone's survival rate drops to 0.